Hi, everybody. My name is Lilly. I'm a Blueprint instructor and tutor. I took the August 2020 LSAT Flex and got a 180 on that exam. And today I'm here to talk to you about how to set up a study plan for success on the LSAT. Let's start with the beginning. Why is it even important to have a study plan? The first reason is simply accountability. Once you have the plan in place, things are real, right? You're really studying for the LSAT, and it's a way to track your progress. So if you have on your calendar 3 assignments and you only got 2 of them done, well, then you've fallen behind for that day. If you have 3 assignments down and you do 4, give yourself a pat on the back. That's really awesome. But having a study plan and actually putting it in your calendar, like a job or any of the other responsibilities that you have, is a really good way to stay accountable and on top of your studying. The second reason is simply organization. By organizing your study plan and creating a study plan ahead of time, you figure out how much time to allot each day, making sure that you're covering all 3 sections of the LSAT, right? You're not totally neglecting reading comprehension or logic games or something like that. And you're really just staying on top of what you have to do and staying organized. Third reason, I already touched on this briefly, is tracking progress. So there's tracking progress in terms of staying accountable. There's also tracking progress in terms of managing stress. Now, let's chat about what we need to do before we even start making the plan. So first and foremost, you're going to want to find your baseline by taking a diagnostic exam. So this is going to be a practice test under test-like conditions. Blueprint has one on our website. If you have sort of a shockingly low score based on what you were expecting, that's totally fine. Don't worry, you can definitely still hit your goal score. But the lower you start, the more work it's going to take time-wise to get to your goal score. So for instance, if you started a 150 for a diagnostic, it's going to be easier to get to a 160 than it will be to get to a 170, just statistically. So knowing your baseline and knowing how much of an increase you're looking for point-wise is key in building the right amount of time into your study plan. Of course, once you have the diagnostic, you also want to have a goal score in mind. So ask yourself where you really want to go to law school. You'd have a range of schools and aim for slightly above the median LSAT score at the law schools you'd be really excited to go to. So for some people, this is going to be aiming for a 170. For some people, this is going to be aiming for a 150. And both are totally great, valid options. You just need to figure out what works for you, where you want to go, and adjust accordingly. So once you've thought about the point increase that you would like to see, it's time to figure out how much time you actually have in your schedule to devote to LSAT studying. Now, don't lie to yourself here. If you have a full-time job or kids or are a full-time student, it's going to be really hard to fit in 20 hours a week of LSAT studying. So realistically, go through your calendar and figure out where you could find quality time to devote to LSAT. So this is not, 1 a.m. when your brain is totally fried. This is sometime during the day, maybe in the morning before work or when you get home after work, a few hours, hopefully, that you could devote to LSAT studying. As a general rule, we suggest 10 to 12 hours a week for 3 to 6 months of overall time. That's aiming in between our recommended total hours, which is about 150 to 300 total hours of studying over the course of your LSAT studying journey. Now, again, that's going to depend on what type of score increase you want to see. For some people, that number will be too low. For others, that will be extravagant and too high. But it's a good general metric. If you don't have 10 to 12 hours a week to dedicate to studying, it might just mean you need to extend your study period. So maybe instead of 3 months, you're going to need that 6 months or even 9 months. That's totally fine. You just want to know it ahead of time so that you can pick the adequate test date and start studying with plenty of time. Let's talk about the actual components of a study guide. So you want to think of your study guide and your study plan as falling into 3 phases. So the first phase is mastering the basics. The second phase is polishing your skills and addressing individual strengths and weaknesses. And the third phase is the final stretch, and it's focused on timing. You should keep track of your strengths and weaknesses. You can do this either in what we call a lessons learned journal, where you're keeping track of questions you got incorrect and why you got them incorrect, or you can track your analytics by figuring out which question types you do better on and which you do worse on for later, so that you can go back and address those weaknesses along the way. If you sign up for Blueprint, they'll track all of your analytics for you. If you're doing this outside of Blueprint, you can also do it. It will just take a little bit more manual effort. But either way, you absolutely want to keep track of your strengths and weaknesses so that you can continually revise your study schedule and personalize it to get the most out of your prep. Notice I haven't mentioned incorporating practice tests other than your diagnostic into your study plan up to this point. That's because you should not do any practice tests during phase 1, mastering the basics. But in phase 2, polishing, you're going to want to take another practice test to sort of get a metric on how much you've improved by mastering the basics of the LSAT. You're going to want to take roughly 1 practice test a week for the last 6 weeks of your study plan. Once you get really close to test date, in the last 2 weeks or so, you might take 2 practice tests a week. Make sure that you leave lots of time to review those exams to further address your strengths and weaknesses and further get an idea of where you're struggling and where you're doing really well. And then incorporate that information into your studying going forward. Now, know if you want even more guidance on how to make a study plan, you can head over to Blueprint's website and you can create a totally free custom study plan when you create a free Blueprint LSAT account. That should be really helpful, totally customizable, and will give you some more structure when you're going about this quite daunting but very doable LSAT study journey. Remember, having a study plan before you begin studying is really crucial to your success on the LSAT. So best of luck. I encourage you to make the best study plan that you can, take these tips into account, and let us know how it goes. Good luck.